Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd love to know what you think. Every comment helps me make the next story better. Subscribe to stay tuned. You're not good enough for me. She didn't say it, but she repeated it for 8 months. Every time her friends whispered it, she brought it home like a souvenir from their gatherings. Whitney thinks you should be more ambitious. Jenna said her husband would never miss their anniversary dinner. Rachel noticed you don't dress as well as the other guys. I listened. I adapted. I tried. Until the night I realized I'd been auditioning for a role I already had, and the casting directors weren't even part of our production. It all started on a Friday evening when Allison came home from brunch at the Source Market Hall. She walked through the door with that look. The one I'd learned to recognize. The "we were talking about you today" look. We were talking today, and the girls think you should have gotten that promotion by now. They think you're too comfortable with your current position. I set down my coffee and looked at her carefully. I'd been with the same company for 3 years, deliberately building expertise before moving into management. It was a strategic choice, not complacency. I explained my reasoning. The technical foundation I was building. The leadership skills I was developing. The timing I was waiting for. She nodded, but I could see it. That little crease between her eyebrows. The one that meant she wasn't convinced. They just care about us, she said. They want to make sure we're both reaching our potential. Us. She said us, but the comments were always about me. That weekend, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Over the past 8 months, there had been a pattern. Comments about my career ambition. My clothing choices compared to other boyfriends in their social circle. How much I talked at gatherings. Whether I planned elaborate enough dates. My practical sedan versus the luxury SUVs other guys drove. Each time, I'd listened. Sometimes I'd even adjusted. Bought a new jacket. Suggested a nicer restaurant. Asked more questions about her day. I treated each comment as individual feedback. Isolated incidents. Helpful observations from people who cared. I hadn't seen the pattern. Monday morning, before I left for work, Allison mentioned casually, "Whitney asked if you'd thought more about the promotion track." I stopped at the door. This was continuing. This wasn't a one-time conversation. "Tell Whitney I'm content with my choices," I said. Something flickered across Allison's face. Concern, maybe. Or annoyance. It disappeared quickly, replaced by her bright morning smile. I went to work, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Why was Whitney following up on my career like she was my manager? Why did my girlfriend's friend have ongoing interest in my professional development? Wednesday evening changed everything. I came home earlier than usual. Allison was on the phone in the bedroom. The door was slightly open. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but as I walked down the hallway, I heard her voice. I know. I told him what you said." Pause. He got defensive, kind of. Another pause. No, he didn't yell or anything. He just shut down a little. I stopped walking. "You're right. I need to be more direct." Then she laughed. "Well, he's not going anywhere. He's too comfortable for that." My blood ran cold. Not going anywhere. Too comfortable. They discussed whether I would leave. I made noise then. Deliberately walked heavily toward the bedroom. The conversation ended quickly. When I appeared in the doorway, Allison had that bright smile again. "Hey babe, didn't hear you come in. What were you talking about?" I asked. "Just girl talk. Nothing important." I looked at her carefully. "Sounded like you were talking about me. About me getting defensive." She waved her hand. "Oh, just about the promotion thing." Whitney was following up. Following up. Like it was an ongoing project. Like this was coordinated. I let it go that night. But I started watching. Listening. Documenting mentally. Friday morning, I woke up to a text from Allison. "The girls want to do a girls' weekend next Friday through Sunday. It's been planned for a while. That's okay, right?" I stared at the message. Next Friday was our 4-year anniversary. We'd talked about it 2 weeks ago. I'd already made reservations at Mercantile Dining and Provision, her favorite restaurant. I texted back. "Our anniversary is Friday. Did you forget?" 3 minutes passed. Oh shit. I did forget. But they already booked the cabin in Breckenridge. "Can we celebrate the weekend after?" I called the restaurant. Confirmed my reservation was made 3 weeks ago. Then I checked social media. Whitney's Instagram, Jenna's Facebook, Rachel's posts. Nothing about a girls' weekend. No mentions of Breckenridge. No shared excitement about cabin trips. This was manufactured. This was a test. I texted back. "Sure. We can reschedule. Have fun." Then I waited. 3 hours before I got a response. "Really? You're not upset?" "Whitney said you'd probably be upset." There it was. Whitney predicted my response, which meant this had been discussed beforehand. They'd planned this scenario to see how I'd react. When Allison came home that evening, I was ready. Be honest with me. Did you actually forget our anniversary? Or was this a test? Her face went pale. What? No. Why would you think that? I kept my voice level. Because Whitney apparently predicted exactly how I'd react. Hard to predict a reaction to something that just happened unless you discussed it before. She tried to deflect. She just knows you're laid back. We talk about stuff. I took a breath. What was the right answer? If I got upset, what would that mean? She didn't answer. That silence told me everything. You canceled our anniversary to test whether I'd fight for it. The way she looked away confirmed it. That night, I left. Told her I needed to think. Spent the evening at a hotel bar, not drinking much, just processing. This wasn't occasional feedback from concerned friends. This was systematic evaluation. They were measuring my responses, testing my reactions, documenting my behavior. I came back Saturday morning. Allison was apologetic. Said she'd stop repeating everything her friends said. She wanted to talk it through. I asked if I could use her laptop to check something for work. She said yes and went to make coffee. The laptop was open on the coffee table. That's when I saw the group text notification, the preview on the screen. So, did he freak out about the anniversary thing? I knew I shouldn't look, but I needed to understand the scope. I opened the message thread. Group chat called Girl Gang. Whitney, Jenna, Rachel, and Allison. I scrolled back through weeks of messages. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. They'd documented everything. My responses to their tests. Their analysis of my behavior. Their recommendations for next steps. Test 1, Financial Control Assessment. Subject responded supportively, but practically to expensive course request. Showed no signs of financial abuse or control issues. Recommend proceeding to Test 2. Subject. They'd call me subject. Test 2, Priority and Possessiveness Check. Subject accepted last-minute cancellation of anniversary plans without argument. No possessive behavior detected. Some concern about lack of assertiveness. There were scores. Ratings on emotional intelligence. Debates about whether my calmness was positive or concerning. 3 weeks ago, Whitney had written, honestly, I'm not sure he's right for you long-term. Rachel replied, he's nice, but nice is boring. Jenna, my husband would never be this passive. Whitney, should we stage something to see if he's capable of getting angry? Allison had responded, I don't know. He's good to me. But you're right that something's missing. Whitney, the fact that you're not sure says everything. Allison returned with coffee. Saw me staring at the screen. Her face went white. How long have you been documenting my inadequacies? I asked calmly. She started to cry. It's not like that. We just talk. I read several messages aloud. The clinical ones. The ones that treated me like a research project. She tried to explain. Said they were helping her figure out what she wanted. I closed the laptop. You already knew what you wanted. You wanted their approval more. I went to the bedroom and started packing. Allison followed me, alternating between crying and arguing, saying she'd cut them off, block them, never talk to them again. I kept packing. She didn't understand that wasn't the point. The damage wasn't in what they'd said. It was in what she'd thought she had the right to do. To treat our relationship like a group project. To evaluate my worth by committee. I'm going to pack some things. I'll get the rest later. She panicked. What? No. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix. This is who you are. Who they are. And I'm not interested in being auditioned anymore. I finished packing and walked toward the door. She kept saying she loved me. That they didn't matter. I stopped at the door. If they don't matter, why have you spent 8 months bringing their opinions into our relationship? She didn't have an answer. I left. Checked into an extended stay hotel in Cherry Creek. Spent the weekend thinking. Processing. Understanding. That first night at the hotel, I called my friend Gordon. We'd known each other since college. He'd met Allison plenty of times at gatherings, but he'd never been part of her social circle. Man, I'm sorry, he said after I explained everything. But honestly, I could never figure out why you put up with that crew. You noticed? Are you kidding? Every time we all hung out, those women would huddle up and analyze everyone. My girlfriend pointed it out months ago. Said they were exhausting. I sat with that information. Other people had seen it. I'd been so busy trying to address each individual concern that I'd missed what was obvious to outsiders. Gordon continued. You know what Katie said after the last dinner we had together? She said Allison's friends treat relationships like a competitive sport. Like they're all trying to win some invisible prize. What prize? Having the perfect life, the perfect partner, the perfect story to tell. But the thing is, none of them are happy. So they can't stand it when someone else is. That hit home. You were happy, right? Before all this. I thought about it. Yeah, I was. We were. Then there's your answer, man. The relationship was working until they convinced her it wasn't. We talked for another hour. About boundaries. About self-respect. About knowing when to fight for something and when to walk away. Gordon said something near the end that stuck with me. You can't argue someone into valuing you. Either they do or they don't. And if they need a committee to decide, then they don't. The text started immediately. From Allison. From Jenna and Rachel. Not from Whitney yet. Jenna wrote, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we talk? Rachel, Allison is devastated. You're really going to throw away 4 years over some texts? I only responded to Allison. We'll talk when you're ready to have an honest conversation without your advisory board. She wrote back. I told them everything. They want to apologize. I replied, I don't want apologies from them. I want you to understand why their opinion shouldn't matter more than our relationship. No response. Then, an hour later, Whitney finally texted. You're really going to bail at the first sign of real feedback? Maybe we were right about you not being good enough. That text told me everything. Even caught, they were doubling down. Monday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Whitney's voice. We need to talk like adults. I'm not sure what we have to talk about. She insisted. Said Allison was falling apart. That I was being unreasonable. I agreed to meet that afternoon at a Vanny Food and Beverage. Public place. Witnesses. I arrived early. Watched Whitney pull up. Then Jenna. Then Rachel. They'd come as a unit, not just Whitney alone. I approached the table. Interesting. I thought this was a one-on-one conversation. Whitney smiled tightly. We all want to help fix this. I sat down. Didn't order anything. What exactly are we fixing? Whitney launched into her pitch. They'd overstepped. They cared about Allison. They wanted what was best for her. Jenna added, we just want to make sure she's happy. Rachel, you have to understand, we've seen her through a lot of relationships. I let them talk. They'd rehearsed this. Then I asked, and you determined I wasn't making her happy based on what? Whitney listed my perceived inadequacies. Career ambition. Spontaneity. Passion. I listened. Then I spoke. Let me tell you what I saw in those texts. 3 women, 2 of whom are unhappy in their own relationships or lack of them, systematically undermining a stable relationship. Whitney bristled. That's not fair. I turned to Jenna. Your texts constantly compare me to your husband. That's not happiness. That's competition. Jenna's face flushed. I looked at Rachel. And you're single because, by your own admission in those texts, all men are disappointing. Rachel went red. Whitney stood up slightly. You had no right to read those messages. I stayed calm. Allison left her laptop open. But you're right. I learned something I wasn't supposed to know. That the 3 of you have spent months treating my relationship like a group project. Whitney tried to justify it. Because she asked for our input. There's a difference between giving advice when asked and systematically campaigning for someone to leave their partner. The table went quiet. I continued. A healthy relationship doesn't require constant intensity. It doesn't need to be fought for daily. It needs respect, communication, and trust. Whitney leaned forward. Maybe that's why you're so boring. No passion. No fire. I stood up. I have plenty of passion. I just don't perform it for an audience. And I don't need to prove anything to people who aren't part of my relationship. I walked toward the exit, then turned back. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop treating Allison's relationships like a reality TV show. And I'm going to decide whether I want to be with someone who values your entertainment over our partnership. Whitney called after me. She's not going to choose you over us. I kept walking. Then you've already answered my question. I texted Allison. I just met with your friends. We need to talk tonight. Come to the hotel at 7. She called immediately. I didn't answer. At 7, she arrived. Eyes red, but also defensive. She sat down, keeping distance between us. Whitney said you were cruel to them today. I looked at her steadily. And you believe her version without asking mine. That's exactly the problem. I'm not here to debate what happened at that meeting. I'm here to talk about us. She shot back. There is no us if you can't understand that my friends are important to me. I asked her directly. When did you start doubting whether I was good enough for you? I never said that. But you thought it. Or your friends thought it. And you couldn't tell the difference. She tried to deflect. They just want me to be happy. Were you unhappy before they started commenting? Silence. That's what I thought. You were happy until they convinced you that you shouldn't be. She counterattacked. Maybe they saw things I was too close to see. Like what specifically? She listed them. Career ambition, spontaneity, passion, excitement. I responded to each one carefully. I'm deliberate about my career because I know what I want. I plan surprises months in advance, but they're not spontaneous enough. We have passion. We had passion. Until you started wondering if it measured up to an imaginary standard. She said quietly, they just think you're too comfortable, that you don't try hard enough. I looked at her. Comfortable in a relationship isn't an insult. It's called security. It's called trust. She whispered, but what if they're right? What if you're just settling? And there it was. You think I'm settling for you. That's what this is really about. She denied it. No, I think you're settling for mediocrity. Those aren't your words. That's Whitney's script. She admitted it. Fine. Yes. We talk about these things. But that doesn't make them wrong. I stood up. You're right. Let me tell you what's actually true. I listed my qualities. I'm financially stable and deliberate. I'm emotionally available and communicative. I'm loyal, consistent, and present. I don't play games. I don't create drama. I don't need to prove myself constantly. I paused. And if that's not good enough for you, then you're right. I'm not good enough for you. Because you need someone who will perform relationship for an audience. She stared at me. For 8 months, you've brought me report cards from people who don't know me, don't respect me, and don't actually want you to be happy. She tried to defend them weakly. They do want me happy. Whitney's divorced and bitter. Rachel's single and cynical. And Jenna compares everyone to her husband like he's the gold standard for humanity. These are your relationship advisors? Tears started. They're my friends. I softened slightly. I know, and I understand needing friends. But there's a difference between friends who support your relationship and friends who undermine it. I continued. You've spent 8 months telling me I'm not good enough in 100 small ways. Death by 1,000 cuts, all delivered with a smile, and they just care about us. She was starting to see it. The tragedy isn't that you listened to them. It's that you never once asked yourself if they were right. You just assumed they were, and I needed to prove them wrong. I gave her the ultimatum. So here's where we are. You can choose to be in a relationship with me, which means my worth isn't up for debate with your friends. Or you can keep letting them audit my value, and we're done. She protested. That's not fair. I can't just cut them out. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to stop bringing their doubts into our relationship. But if you can't do that, then you're telling me what I need to know. She left without answering, which was an answer. 2 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. This is Jenna. I need to talk to you. Not with the others. Just me. I agreed to meet at Huckleberry Roasters in Lodo. Expected another confrontation. But when Jenna arrived, she looked uncomfortable. Not aggressive. I owe you an apology, she said immediately. I was surprised. She continued. I went along with everything Whitney said because it's easy to agree with her. She's so sure about everything. She paused. But after Monday, after what you said, I went home and looked at my own marriage. And I realized I've been doing the same thing to my husband that we were doing to you. I listened. Whitney's been miserable since her divorce. And instead of dealing with her own stuff, she's been. It's like she can't stand seeing other people's relationships work. She admitted, Rachel just follows her lead. And I got caught up in it. The texts, the analysis, the testing. It became entertainment. And we convinced ourselves we were helping. I asked, does Allison know you're here? No. And Whitney would lose it if she knew I was talking to you. Jenna gave me insider information. Whitney's been calling Allison constantly, telling her you're manipulative, that you're trying to isolate her from her friends. Classic projection, I said. Jenna nodded. Yeah, and Allison's confused. Part of her knows you're right, but Whitney's in her ear nonstop. Then she told me, they're planning an intervention. This Saturday, they want to sit Allison down and convince her that leaving you is the best thing she could do. I asked, why are you telling me this? Because I watched what we did to you, and then I went home and realized I've been doing it to my husband for years. Constantly comparing him, telling him he's not enough. And he's been taking it, just like you did. Her voice cracked. I don't want to be that person anymore. I respected her honesty. But I also understood. This doesn't change things with Allison. What are you going to do? She asked. Nothing. If Allison wants to be with me, she knows where I am. But I'm not going to fight for someone who won't fight for herself. Jenna looked at me with something like admiration. I wish my husband had your boundaries. I stood to leave. It's never too late to change the dynamic. She texted me later that day. They'd already started the intervention without waiting until Saturday. Thursday through the weekend, I maintained silence. Multiple calls and texts from Allison. All ignored. Then I got a text from Whitney. "You're being childish. She deserves better than your silent treatment." I finally broke my silence. Responded with surgical precision. "Tell her she's right. I deserve better. I'm moving out this weekend." Whitney called immediately. I declined it. Text storm from Allison. Panic, confusion, promises to change. I rented a U-Haul for Saturday. Called the landlord. Began removing myself from the lease. Friday evening, I went to the apartment while Allison was at work. I timed this deliberately. I packed systematically. My belongings, my furniture, dividing shared items fairly. Before I left, I wrote a note. Handwritten, not texted. "I'm not leaving because I'm angry. I'm leaving because I respect myself too much to stay where I'm not valued. For 8 months, you've been telling me in 100 small ways that I'm not enough. You didn't say it with your words, but you said it with your actions. Every time you brought me their concerns instead of your own. Every time you defended their judgment over our relationship. The tragedy isn't that you listened to them. It's that you never thought to question if they were right. You just assumed they were, and I needed to change. Whitney doesn't want you happy. She wants you as miserable as she is. Rachel is bitter about her own love life and projects it onto yours. And Jenna is working through her own marriage issues by managing ours. You deserve friends who support your happiness, not undermine it. But more than that, you deserve to trust your own judgment about your own life. I hope you find that someday. I hope you find someone who meets whatever standard they've set. But I'm done auditioning. I wish you well. I really do. But I wish myself better." I left the keys on the counter next to the note. Saturday morning at 8, I arrived with the U-Haul. 2 of my actual friends helped. We were efficient. Less than 3 hours. I drove to my new apartment in Washington Park. 1 bedroom. Fresh start. Different part of Denver. New gym, new coffee shop, new routines. That first night, I unpacked methodically. Ordered takeout. Watched a movie. I felt relief more than sadness. Allison returned home Saturday afternoon. Based on what I learned later, she read the note multiple times. She called me 27 times that day. I counted. I answered once. Around 8 at night. "You can't just leave like this," she said. "I can and I did. We need to talk about this. We've talked. I told you what I needed. You chose differently. I didn't choose them over you. You didn't choose me either. That's the problem." She begged. "Please, can we just meet and talk? What's left to say?" She was crying, making incoherent promises. "I hope you're happy. I genuinely do. But I'm going to be." I hung up. Blocked her number. Also blocked Whitney and Rachel. Kept Jenna unblocked, in case she needed support. The following week, Jenna sent me updates. I didn't ask, but she volunteered them. Sunday after I moved out, Whitney and Rachel hosted an emergency session with Allison. Their narrative: I was controlling, manipulative. Me leaving proved they were right. During this meeting, Jenna spoke up. Told them they were wrong. That we were wrong. That I was actually the most emotionally healthy person in this whole situation. Whitney turned on her. Accused her of being brainwashed. Jenna walked out. Later texted Allison privately, telling her I was right about everything. Whitney increased pressure on Allison. Framed Jenna's departure as proof I was dividing everyone. Rachel sided with Whitney. The friend group fractured. 2 weeks later, Jenna told me she'd started couples therapy with her husband. Apparently, he'd been miserable for years. Allison was still in contact with Whitney and Rachel, but less frequently. Week 3, Allison showed up at my new apartment. Security buzzed. I had the option to let her up. I went down to the lobby instead. Met her there. She'd cut contact with Whitney and Rachel, she said. 2 days ago. She saw everything clearly now. Wanted another chance. I asked, "When did you cut contact?" 2 days ago. "So 3 weeks after I left, after I blocked you, after your friend group fell apart, you decided I was right?" She defended herself. I needed time to process. And I've had time too. Time to realize I don't want to be with someone who needs to lose everything else before choosing me. She said she loved me. I loved you too. Past tense. But love isn't enough when respect is missing. I wished her the best. I really meant it. I didn't go back upstairs with her. The next week, I had my regular therapy session. I'd started seeing Dr. Martinez a month after discovering the group texts. Not to get Allison back, but to understand my own patterns. I told her about Allison showing up. About the ultimatum I'd given. Dr. Martinez leaned forward. How did it feel to say no? Peaceful, I said. Sad, but peaceful. That's healthy grief. You're mourning what you thought you had, not what you actually had. She asked me what I'd learned about myself through all this. I thought about it. I've always been accommodating. I thought that was a strength. And it is, in healthy relationships. But in toxic dynamics, it becomes a vulnerability. They exploited my willingness to adapt. Dr. Martinez nodded. You were applying healthy relationship skills to an unhealthy situation. That's common. We teach people to communicate, to compromise, to consider other perspectives. But we don't always teach them to recognize when the foundation is rotten. She continued, what you did took courage. You set a boundary and enforced it. You didn't waver. You didn't get pulled back in by tears or promises. That's remarkable. It doesn't feel remarkable. It feels like basic self-respect. Most people lose sight of that when they're in love. They twist themselves into knots trying to be enough for someone who will never be satisfied. You recognized the pattern and walked away. I asked her something that had been bothering me. Do you think I should have tried harder? Given her more time? Dr. Martinez met my eyes. How much time does someone need to decide if they value you? She had 8 months to choose you without conditions. She didn't. She had 3 weeks after you left. She didn't. She only showed up after losing her entire support system. That's not choosing you. That's having no other options. That clarity helped. She asked, what are you looking for in your next relationship? Someone who trusts their own judgment. Someone who doesn't need external validation for their choices. Someone who treats me like a partner, not a project. And you believe you deserve that? I do now. 1 month after the breakup, I ran into Jenna at a coffee shop. We caught up. She was doing well. Her marriage was improving. She mentioned Allison was still struggling. Whitney was increasingly isolated. I felt sympathy, but not responsibility. You seem happy, Jenna observed. I am. For the first time in months, I'm not being graded. She asked if I'd ever consider talking to Allison again. I told her the truth. That ship had sailed the moment Allison chose validation over trust. 3 months later, I was in a different place entirely. Professionally, I'd actually pursued that promotion. Got it too. Not because of external pressure, but because the timing was finally right. I'd started dating someone new. Claire, an architect, independent, with her own friend group that never discussed me. Early on, Claire mentioned once that a friend made a comment about me. I set an immediate boundary. If your friends have concerns about me, I'd rather hear them directly from you, if you share them. Otherwise, I'm not interested in third-party assessments. She laughed. Fair enough. For what it's worth, I don't share their concern. They're just protective. That was it. Never came up again. This was different. No tests. No evaluations. No committee meetings about my worthiness. Claire judged me by her own experience, not her friend's standards. I realized this is what healthy looks like. Our third date, Claire and I were walking through Washington Park after dinner. She'd been telling me about a difficult project at work, a client who kept changing requirements. How do you handle that? I asked. Set boundaries early. I learned the hard way that if you don't establish what's reasonable from the start, people will push forever. I smiled. That's good advice for more than just work. She looked at me. You've had to set some boundaries recently? I gave her the abbreviated version. The friend group. The constant evaluation. The tests. Claire stopped walking. They tested you? Like, deliberately set up scenarios? Yeah, that's insane. That's not how adults handle relationships. I shrugged. They thought they were helping. Claire shook her head. My friends and I talk about our relationships. Of course we do. But there's a difference between venting and systematically undermining. When my friend Rachel was dating that guy last year, we all thought he was wrong for her. Know what we did? What? We told her once. Clearly. Then we supported her while she figured it out herself. Because she's an adult who gets to make her own decisions. Even bad ones. That simple statement hit me. That's how it should work. Claire continued. Relationships are hard enough without a peanut gallery scoring every interaction. If my friends started doing that, I'd tell them to back off. Would they listen? Probably not immediately. But I'd keep saying it until they did. Because my relationship isn't their entertainment. We started walking again. She asked, do you think you're over her? Your ex? I considered it honestly. I'm over what we had. I'm sad about what I thought we had. But I'm not waiting around hoping she'll change. That door is closed. Good. Because I like you. And I don't want to be someone's rebound. You're not. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't ready. She smiled. Okay then. Want to get coffee? We did. And it was easy. Natural. No performance. No evaluation. Saturday afternoon, 3 months after the breakup, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Whitney's voice. How did you get this number? From Allison. Listen, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I didn't react emotionally. Just stayed curious. Allison is really struggling. She made a mistake. We all did. But she loves you. You're calling me 3 months later to tell me Allison made a mistake? Yes. And I'm willing to admit I was wrong. You're actually a good guy. Let me guess. Rachel's gone too now, isn't she? And Allison is pulling away from you. Silence confirmed it. You're not calling because you realized I was good enough. You're calling because you're losing your audience. Whitney's anger resurfaced. You know what? Maybe we were right about you. You're cold. No. I'm just clear about my worth. Tell Allison I hope she figures out hers. I hung up. Blocked the number. I felt no anger. No vindication. Just closure. For 8 months, I tried to be good enough for people who would never be satisfied because the problem wasn't my adequacy. It was their need for control. I learned that when someone repeatedly tells you what others think of you, they're really telling you what they think, but lack the courage to own. Relationships aren't group projects. They're not up for committee review. And they definitely shouldn't require audience participation. I don't hate Allison. I don't even blame her entirely. She was insecure and surrounded by voices that amplified that insecurity instead of addressing it. I spent months trying to pass tests I never should have taken. The moment I walked away wasn't when I gave up. It was when I finally showed up for myself. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be diminished. Not with anger, not with drama, but with clear, calm boundaries that say, I know my worth, even if you've forgotten yours. I deserve better. And the moment I said it out loud, I started living better. Dear listeners, that's our ending. If it resonated, subscribe to support the channel. See you next time.